Hello, everybody. A lot of awesome mushroom fans out there. You guys had great questions and a lot of great stories about mushroom experiences of the past. So I really appreciate all those comments. I had a lot of fun making that video. I'm a huge fan of mushrooms, and there's really cool science to it. So I'm glad you guys also agree with me on that. There were probably about 5 really great questions that I saw show up a lot in the comments. So I wanted to take a chance to answer those today. So the first one is, this came up a number of times, is how do you clean mushrooms? So a lot of folks reported that they had heard, lots of times in the past that you should never wash mushrooms. You should only take a kind of a wet cloth and wipe them off. And so there's a lot of kind of myth and lore surrounding what you should do there. So we've done a bunch of testing on this, and we've actually found that if a mushroom doesn't have exposed gills, so like a white mushroom, a cremini mushroom, it's totally fine to completely submerge them in water. The exterior of those mushrooms contains some really cool compounds. One of them is called a hydrophobin, which is a protein that repels water. So it's, in the forest, rain can fall on a mushroom and it doesn't absorb it, and those hydrophobins are responsible for that. So if there's no gills exposed, you can submerge it completely in water. We found that you can keep them in water for 5 minutes, whatever. They take up a very small amount of water. If you're working with something that has a lot of gills, like an oyster mushroom, it can actually absorb about 25% of its weight in water. So that's a very different story. Now, if you're working with a recipe that I presented in this What's Eating Dan episode, where we're cooking them in water, you can wash any mushroom. Any of them is totally fine too. But if you're using them in different applications, so say you're roasting or they need to cook alongside something else, that additional water could be problematic. So you kind of want to, based on your application, you want to make a decision of whether you're going to wash those or not. The good news is that a lot of those open gill mushrooms, such as portobello or oyster, often come really clean from the supermarket. So you generally don't need to, get rid of a ton of dirt. But if you're using this recipe specifically, you can wash any of them. So that's really convenient. All right, so the next question I want to answer came from Sue Pugh, and she said that I've never liked mushrooms. I don't like their flavor or texture. Any suggestions on how to start liking them? So I think that's a common problem for a certain set of people, that mushrooms, because their texture flavor just isn't appealing. The good news is that there's a ton of variety of mushrooms. And so my recommendation in terms of how to kind of come around to liking mushrooms or experimenting with them is to actually just buy a bunch of different kinds of them and cook them. I would use the method that I present in this really simply with some salt and pepper, and just try that, because there are some mushrooms that are a lot milder, such as an oyster mushroom with a really mild texture too, that you might absolutely love. So, but you might not like white button mushrooms, or shiitake mushrooms might have too strong of a flavor. So I would experiment with the huge variety of mushrooms that are out there, cooked really simply, and kind of see what you think. I also think mushroom flavor can be great if you look for a dried mushroom, so like dried porcinis or dried shiitakes, and try adding a little of those into your cooking. You can add some dried porcini to a soup or stew. Dried shiitakes can also be added to soups and stews to give kind of a nice meatiness. So maybe if you remove the texture component, you might like the flavor. So I would play around with that kind of stuff, and I hope it works, because mushrooms can be really great. So this next question came from Rebecca Hahn, and she was asking, barring growing mushrooms ourselves, how long can you keep them, and what's the best way to store mushrooms that you buy at the supermarket? So the first big thing is, if you are going to wash your mushrooms, don't do that ahead of time. Do that right before you're going to cook. And the reason is, you don't want them to pick up any additional water and then sit there with that water in the fridge. It can lead to molding and things going off. So you want to do that right before you're going to use them. That's the biggest thing. Otherwise, if the container they come in is usually a good place to store them. If you buy them in bulk, keeping them in a zipper lock bag that isn't fully closed is a good idea, so you can actually allow a little moisture to move around. Those are the best bets. We've actually found that white button mushrooms is pretty interesting. If they age a little bit, not so that they're slimy and actually gone bad, they actually have a little more intense flavor. So definitely don't get rid of your mushrooms until you're clear that they have gone bad. They can actually develop a little bit more flavor. So those are my recommendations on storage. So I also got a few questions about what book I was showing when there were some of those cool diagrams of the mushrooms and that kite and stuff. What book was it? And I'm excited you asked that because it's from a book that I worked on years ago with a colleague here who now runs the ATK Kids. Her name is Molly Birdbaum, and we worked for years on a couple of food science books for Cooks Illustrated, and they're a labor of love, and they're really, really awesome. So I wanted to show them both to you, and we'll have links below the video if you want to pick them up. It's a good holiday thing. So the first one here, so I hope you can see that, is Cook Science, and this one has the mushroom stuff in there. So you can see all that really cool stuff that we talked about with chitin and the diagram and the experiment. So this is 50 ingredients, and we do a deep dive into the science of each one and a lot of the stuff that's coming from here for the What's Eating Dan series. So if you like that stuff, you can go even deeper with this. And then the other one, which we did before that, is the science of good cooking. And so this one is 50 concepts, such as like high heat browns food and low heat is great for moisture retention, that kind of stuff. How eggs function, tons of really cool deep dive science on this too. So we'll have links to those below. Check them out if you're interested. This one's a New York Times bestseller, so you know it's good. But anyway, so thanks for asking about that, and I hope you check them out.